Hey, fellow superhero cinephiles. Did you know that almost 30% of adults say they haven't read a book in the past year? The primary reason why is a lack of time. Well, Audible's here to help with the gift of found time. Thanks to Audible, you can listen to audiobooks like Marvel Comics, The Untold Story, or Slugfest, inside the epic 50-year battle between Marvel and DC. Read up on the history of superheroes in comics and movies with Grant Morrison's Super Gods. You can also check out Vanguard, my original superhero novel series, or try The Vril Agenda or The Adventures of Fortune McCall, both of which were written by our dearly departed host emeritus, Derek Ferguson. Whatever you're looking for, Audible has thousands of titles that you can consume while commuting, exercising, cooking, or just relaxing at home. And not only audiobooks, an Audible membership also gives you access to tons of content like podcasts, theatrical performances, and exclusive Audible originals that you won't find anywhere else. To give you a taste of what you can get, Audible has partnered with this show to provide listeners with a free 30-day trial. All you have to do is go to audibletrial.com/supercinemapod, and with your free trial, you get 1 free audiobook and 2 free Audible originals. In fact, you get to keep those titles even if you cancel before the trial is over. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to audibletrial.com/supercinemapod and start your free trial today.
Cars, don't dress like a car thief, man.
What are you? You a cop?
Really? You seriously think I'm a cop? Cop in a skin-tight red and blue suit. You know, you got a mind of a true scholar, sir. I was going more for one of the guys who do the luge. Good thinking, good thinking. Use the window. Get out the window. There you go. You got it. Whoa.
Crouch! Just let me go.
Is that a knife? Is that a real knife?
Yes, it's a real knife.
My weakness, it's small knives.
Just let me go.
Anything but knives! Oh, it's so simple. That was cool, man.
What the hell is this?
Webbing that I developed myself. I don't think you really want to know.
Come
right
on,
now.
let me go.
One second.
Knock it off, man. No. Come on, let me go. Stop it. Dude, that isn't funny.
It is
Come
kind
on,
of funny,
help.
Oof, this could have gotten a lot worse. Now hold still.
Oh! Boys in blue here! Yo, I got him! Freeze!
He's not
You and the
going
tights
anywhere.
don't move!
You serious?
Who are you?
No one seems to grasp the concept of the mask.
Freeze!
I just did 80% of your job. Huh? That's how you repay me?
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and I'm here today with an old friend of mine and a fellow podcaster and fellow geek, and that is the Mr. B-hyphen himself, Kelen Conley. Kel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Perry. This has been a long time coming, man. Like you emailed me 15 years ago to be on my Scrubs podcast, and I read a second episode, and
Yeah,
and now here we are.
I completely forgot about that. Way back in the day, we had talked back when we were both on LiveJournal. We talked about
Yes.
doing a Scrubs podcast. Never got around. You did one episode, and then that was it.
One episode.
And now, you know, Zach Braff and Donald Faison are doing their own Scrubs podcast anyway, so there's no point.
It's actually really good. I do
is.
enjoy listening to them reminisce and then cut on each other. It's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. I've really been enjoying. I'm way behind on some of my podcast shows, but I've got like a whole stack of episodes that I got to catch up on with that one.
Yeah, same with me. And if you don't stay with it every week, it can catch up on you very quickly. But it's nice to know that you have a stockpile. So it's like, you know what, I have a 6-hour drive. Let me just throw these on And every time I go to my dad's, I got a 2-hour drive, so I knock out a lot of pods that way. So
Yeah, we got to make
I understand.
a Costco run, which is like 4 hours away from here, so
Whew.
round trip. So I think I'll probably save them up for that.
I don't have a Costco. I don't know how far away the one. I guess Pittsburgh would be the closest one for me, but
Oh,
it's not
wow.
4 hours. That's only an hour for us. So
Wow. Anyway, we're talking about. I haven't asked. People don't even know who you are, so give everybody a chance to get to know you.
well, I am a jack of all trades and a master of none, is what I've just come to this realization. Probably should have been an IT specialist, but I've been in a podcast game off and on since about 2008, 2009. I had a couple attempts there, and then off and on with a few buddies I would record, and then 2016 I just decided I wanted to do my own solo podcast called Hyphenation,
Mhm.
and just dived in feet first, so to speak. And almost to the 200th episode, I've been on hiatus, um, mainly because got a little burnout recently, just
Mhm.
because I actually ended up starting my own podcast network with a bunch of friends, and so I'm a guest on their shows, and I'm part of helping with their shows, and I end up doing a wrestling show here in January that just wrapped its first season. So I was doing a lot of podcasts. So
Mhm.
Hyphenation's been on break, but it's just me get on there and just talking about whatever interests me for a little bit. So it might be about an old comic book. It might be about some movies with my semi-regular co-host Marcus Robinson. But we have a lot of fun, and I'm actually planning on finally sitting down this weekend and doing my episode about Derek, because I've been putting it off, and I realized I had a lot of grief to deal with on that front, more than I thought at first. So I think I'm really going to try to sit down and do something special for him, because he was one of the biggest advocates of my show. Big surprise.
Mhm.
So I'm definitely planning on doing that. But that's mostly what I do, and then I also record under the name B hyphen. Got stuff on all the streaming services from my album from a few years back, working on some new music. And when I'm not doing that, I guess I'm trying to get my YouTube channel up and running. I keep
Mhm.
watching all these videos. I haven't really done a soft launch, but I haven't really launched into the editing portion. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm up to when I'm not being a dad and a father and working at my day job.
Mhm. Yeah. Well,
A
speaking
dad and
of
a father, a dad
speaking
and a
of a
husband,
dad and a father, I
a
just
dad
got
and a
that
father.
myself.
Sorry, Angel.
Speaking of Derek, you were actually this is actually the second time you've actually been on the show, because we had when we had Tom DJ on to talk about Derek, we used the theme song that you recorded for
Yes.
Better in the Dark, and that was
Yes, we
actually
did.
the second theme song you recorded for them, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I had enough theme songs where Tom emailed me one day. He's like, "Why don't you make an EP out of them?" And I was like, "Well, I guess I should." So for years, I had like this 15 song EP of all these Better in the Dark themes I did over different beats and stuff. But yeah, that was just a random whim. I was a big fan of Better in the Dark, and I emailed the guys and I was like, "Hey, I decided to do this little song based off the podcast because I love it so much. Hope you like it." They're like, "We're gonna make this our theme song." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then that's how I became the musical maestro of
Mhm.
Better in the Dark, as I
Yeah.
am known in
Yeah.
those parts.
And you and I, well, you, me, and Derek, and Tom, and all of us, we go way back to the days of
Fiction.
fan fiction. Yeah, way
Yes,
back in
sir.
the day.
Yes, sir, man. I miss the fanfic days, man. It's crazy because it was so new. It was the Wild West of the
Mhm.
internet, and I started my own sites because Gary Linsky didn't like my pitches for Avengers 2000. Me and G are cool now, and I was like, I'm gonna start my own site, and then that's how I met Eric Fromm and Clayton Tooley and TC and all of them. So we started the
Mhm.
anthology sites, and then I found out about Thomas and Derek, and found out about Marvel 2000, and I was always, let me tell you right now, always so impressed by Marvel 2000, especially in the early days, because I know everybody had trouble doing issues
Mhm.
and getting hidden deadlines and stuff like that. But you guys amassed such a quick amount of material. And like with you writing like the X books and then the Turtle
Mhm.
book, like you were just churning things out, like probably next to Tobias. Like I don't know anybody who writes as fast as you used to back in those days.
Yeah, yeah. That was because I was lucky back in those days, because I was in high school back when this all
Yeah.
happened, and I had like that first year that we were doing those sites, I had like 2 free periods every day.
Oh.
So, and also I had like, I also had this, I was also taking like a keyboarding class, and I was so good in I finished all my work like in the first 10 minutes, first 15 minutes of class, and then I just had time to do whatever I wanted. So like I would just constantly write stuff because of that.
Oh, that's the secret. Okay.
And that's the
'Cause
secret,
I
yeah.
was just confined to the evenings when I got to use the computer and stuff. So, and then some evenings I just dicked around on the internet. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
what can you do, you know? But it was crazy because we all had these characters we loved, and we came together, and then on the heroes boards and the old Yahoo groups and stuff, and we had our fights, we had our highs where we were all getting along, and we came up with some pretty creative stuff between all
Yeah.
the sites that was out there, and I still swear that there are Marvel editors and DC editors who picked some of our stuff and eventually was like, okay, it's been a couple years now, let's throw this little fanfic idea in here, and more than one time, man. So I think we contributed in our own little way.
I think so. Yeah, it was definitely a fun time. It was an interesting time too. In a lot of
absolutely.
Ways. And it was because of that I got to meet, you know, guys like you, guys like Tobias and Derek, obviously as well, and a bunch of other people who are, some of them are still writing original fiction, some of them moved on to other stuff. So, but
yeah,
there are ones who you still keep in touch with here and there.
I have more people that I'm still friends with on Facebook from fan fiction than any other walk of life, I think, because I'm like, I can't get rid of Kel Carpenter. I gotta be friends with Kel.
Okay. So anyway, I got a few pieces of news we're going to be talking about. First thing is, have you heard about the latest, I guess it was a slow news day at Fox, and Dean Cain and Kevin Sorbo? Did you hear about this thing with Captain America?
No. What happened?
Oh God. Okay. So every like 5 years or so, Fox News has a slow news day, or they can't find enough to get outraged about. So they go to comic books and they find something in comic books to get outraged about. And so there's a new comic book out by Marvel called The United States of Captain America. And it's by Christopher Cantwell and Dale Eaglesham. And it's basically, the whole concept is that, you know, Steve Rogers is going across America and he's meeting he finds out that there are these other characters, these other guys who are taking up the name Captain America. And, you know, they're coming from all different walks of life and all that. And it's kind of like, you know, their own reflection of what America is and all that kind of stuff. So I haven't read it yet, but I haven't read it yet, but I hear it's pretty good. Anyway, the first issue, it opens with Steve Rogers reflecting on the fact that, you know, he's often noted, which he's done in the comic books many times, that he stands for the American dream and not the American government. And he's
away for that reason. Yep.
Yeah, and he says that the American dream is misunderstood and it's too easily turned into nationalism. And when that happens, it becomes a lie. And because the dreams often exclude many different people. And, you know, just the very kind of stuff that Captain America comic books have been talking about since 1941.
Since its inception.
Yeah. And so Fox News got really pissed off about this, or, you know, pretended to get really pissed off about it. And so then they had Dean Cain and Kevin Sorbo coming on to talk about how, you know, they're sick of all this wokeness in comic books. And
Dean Cain and Sorbo was their panelists?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think it was two different segments, but, you know, it's like, you know, from the, you know, I'm waiting for Gail Simone had this thing, you know, tweet out your favorite Dean Cain film, imaginary Dean Cain film. And mine was Cain v. Sorbo, Dawn of, you know, Why Won't Anyone Call Us?
Dawn of not getting that call back.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And the funny thing is, though, someone asked Cain on Twitter, you know, everyone was dunking on both of these guys because it's clear that they didn't even read the book. And Dean Cain even admitted, he's like, oh, I never read the issue, but I stand by everything I said.
There you go, Dean.
Oh,
that's Superman for you, man. He's stands for something.
Well, it's funny. I was seeing a lot of people on Twitter and it's just like, you see the Dean Cain and how he just clearly doesn't understand Superman or Captain America, which explains why his Superman was so terrible in the first place.
Yes. I was never a fan of Lois and Clark like that.
he was a good Clark Kent. I'll give him that. But his Superman, you could have taken all those scenes of him with Superman, put in a cardboard cutout and nobody would know the difference.
You're not wrong. And that's the worst part. People were literally watching to see Superman, and then it's like, oh.
And he appears
I'll let down every
he appears
episode.
like 5 minutes in every episode, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's it. And then it's back to the dramedy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the weird like nighttime soap thing, and it was such a weird cheesy show.
Never caught my attention. I tried. I was like, I gotta check out this Superman show, and then I was like, no, I don't.
Yeah, I liked it when I was a kid, back when it was on
Yeah.
the air, and I think I was in elementary school at that time. And then when a few years back, back when Netflix first started up and they had the DVD system.
Yes.
And they had Lois and Clark on there. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to rewatch Lois and Clark. This is going to be great. And I started watching the first season. I'm like, oh my God, I remember the last season being terrible, but I didn't realize how terrible the first season was either.
Oh man. Yeah. The only reason I would peek in on Lois and Clark was Terry Hatcher.
Terry Hatcher, yeah.
That was it. I'd be like, let me see what Terry Hatcher's up to. And then she got that weird haircut, and then I kind of checked out after that.
John Shea was also pretty good as Lex Luthor in that first season.
He was a very good Luthor.
I
did enjoy his performances.
Yeah, that was probably the only real thing about the first season that really kind of stands the test of time, is his Luthor.
Hey, you either Luthor it or you don't got it.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like Smallville in that way too, because Smallville, the best thing about it was Michael Rosenbaum as Lex Luthor.
Yeah, I did stay with Smallville way longer than I thought I would, though.
I stayed all the way. Derek and I talked about this back when we did the Crisis episode, but by the end of Smallville, I was hate watching it.
See, I've never got to that point. I think I made it to like season 6 or 7, I believe, because it was when something crashed, and it was definitely after they introduced Lois and stuff. But that's the last I remember. I have not looked at it since.
Yeah, they have it on Hulu, and so I had the whole thing.
Oh crap!
Yeah, there's 10 seasons of your life gone now.
Wow.
I had it on in the background as I was doing other stuff, actually. But
that's what you use it for. It's like, let me just. Smallville's a great do something else show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay. They get the view, and we get to do something else. So works for both parties.
Okay. So next thing here is Margot Robbie was interviewed about the Suicide Squad, and well, first thing she said, she was asked what she thought about Zack Snyder killing Harley Quinn in his Justice League cut. And then she's like, oh, I didn't even know that. So she looks like she didn't watch the Snyder cut.
She's a very busy lady.
Yeah.
So I understand she didn't have 4 hours.
Yeah. But anyway, she said that she's going to be taking a break from Harley Quinn because it was like back-to-back filming between Birds of Prey and then the Suicide Squad. But she's like, well, I need a break from Harley. She's like, it's exhausting. But she also says that she doesn't know when the next time we're going to see her is. So it looks like at the moment there's no real future plans for Harley right now.
I mean, we've gotten 3 movies with Harley so far, and easily her portrayal of Harley is the best in all 3 of those movies. So
yeah,
I have no problem with Margot's work there or her portrayal of Harley. So if she wants to take a break and pursue other projects and things like that, that's perfectly fine, as long as DC doesn't try to pull like the rug from under her. But they'd be nuts to do that at this point. So it'll be fun, especially because I feel like with the Snyder Cut coming out and kind of with Black Adam just finished wrapping and everything, and with the pandemic slowly people kind of ending, I kind of feel like the DCEU has a chance to really reestablish its footing with the Snyder Cut, even on the heels of Wonder Woman 1984, where a lot of people were split on that film. So it's a good time for DC to really try to establish some other characters and see what they can build on their own, because Marvel's in the beginning stages of Phase 4. So why not take a shot with some other characters in the next couple of years before you go back to the Harley trough?
Yeah, and it looks like they're going to be doing that with the Flash movie, because they're bringing in the new Supergirl in that, and there are rumors about other characters that are be coming in too. So
there's a lot of rumors.
yeah. But also there's they got the new Shazam movie that's in production now as well, and they're talking about doing a new Constantine movie. We'll see how that works out too.
Nice. They're going to bring back Keanu. They should.
No, well, there was actually a rumor. There was actually talk about that at one point about doing a sequel to the Keanu movie, but apparently last I heard, I don't know if this is still the case, but last I heard, they were looking to bring in an actor of color to play John Constantine.
Well, then I'm all for that.
Yeah, that was the last thing I heard. Although I really want to see what's his name come back. What's his name? The guy who plays it on the TV show, because like that's.
Oh yeah, I know you're talking about. I can't think of his name.
Matt Ryan, I think it's Matt Ryan. I always get his last name wrong, but I think it's Matt Ryan. But I think he's just like I mentioned this many times, but he's like the perfect John Constantine. So
I have seen it. I have seen that a couple times, and I do think he does a great job in that role. So
yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Next thing is looks like Zendaya was asked about
Matt Ryan. You're right.
Yeah, Matt Ryan. Okay, good. So Zendaya was asked about Spider-Man No Way Home, and apparently she says that it's kind of bittersweet because we don't know if we're going to do another one. She's like, she says, is it just going to be 3 and done? So I guess they haven't had any plans after that so far.
That's something that we're going to touch on tonight, I'm sure, as we dwell into the Amazing Spider-Man. Like the first trilogy only got 3. Spider-Man 4 infamously got canceled, and then the Amazing Spider-Man never got the 3rd movie, of course, and they rebooted and went to the MCU version of Tom Holland and things like that. So, and plus the whole Sony Marvel Studios thing is always in delicate balance too. So
yeah.
It might be the last time that we see them. Now you would think, oh, easily they'll come back and do more movies and stuff, but just like Margot, like actors don't want to keep doing the same roles over and over. So it's entirely possible that it might be the last time we see this original cast together.
Yeah, and also with all the rumors about No Way Home being like a Spider-Verse movie, this could be like a good send-off for the cast anyway.
I mean, if you're going to go out with a bang, and if they pull it off like I'm hoping they do, and I'm really going to try not to watch any trailers or anything, and I don't want to know anything till I walk in that theater in December, knock on wood. If they pull it off like all these rumors are saying, it could be. Well, obviously for me, it's going to be one of the best cinema experiences for me, but it could be huge, and you might not have to go back to that well, because who knows what they'll be able to spin off of this that wouldn't even involve Holland or Zendaya in the future. So
I think if anything, Marvel would probably keep Holland around. I think they'd probably want to, like, if anything, they might work out some deal with Sony where they can still use Spider-Man in their movies, because I think they would want to because Holland seems really committed to the role.
I think so too. He gets a lot of fun playing Spider-Man, and that's something he brings to the table. Like even from Civil War all the way through Far From Home, you can tell this dude really loves playing Peter Parker. Really loves playing Spider-Man, and not to take anything away from Toby or Andrew, but it just really comes through in his performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's a pretty good segue to the movie we're talking about, and that is The Amazing Spider-Man, directed by Mark Webb, and this was the first Spider-Man reboot we got.
2012,
yeah, same year as the Avengers, actually. And
yes, it was.
In fact, originally there was when they were designing the digital cityscapes for Avengers to be used in the CGI, the Battle of New York, they were talking with Sony about putting the Oscorp building in there as well, the one from Amazing Spider-Man, and linking them together. So there was a possibility of Andrew Garfield playing Spider-Man in the MCU at one point.
I know that was a big rumor, yeah.
Yeah, but
they were in talks and everything.
Yeah, but apparently I can't remember exactly what happened, but I guess the timing was off. Like they couldn't get the designs of the Oscorp building weren't finished in time to have them added to the New York cityscape in Avengers or something along those lines. But that was like the most that was going to happen, was just like that little Easter egg type of thing.
Which would have been very cool. And this is something to give the fans something to talk about, of course, because I don't think Marvel or Sony was ready to be on the level that they are now at that point, especially with them freshly rebooting. Good old Pete.
So I remember when this movie was announced and when like the first trailer came out and everything, I remember fan community was very angry about it, if you remember, because I remember everybody commenting about Andrew Garfield, and the whole rumor was that the whole big fear was that they're going to make Spider-Man like Twilight.
Yeah. Oh, that was a huge fear. I mean, because we were fresh. I mean, hell, I think the Twilight movies were still coming out at this point.
Yeah.
So the idea that Sony would pivot and make Andrew that guy and kind of maybe mess with the mythology and everything like that, I think that was a real fear.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
For fans, but fanboys overreact about everything, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I still remember the organic web shooter thing, and now it kind of makes more sense for him to be organic at times for me. So I get it, but obviously it was unfounded, thankfully.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, what were your original thoughts when you saw this movie?
So I tried to go see this movie. I tried to do a double feature. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go see this. I'm gonna go see Dark Knight Rises same day. The day I went was when my local movie theater decided they were going to pull Amazing Spider-Man. So I ended up just getting to watch Dark Knight Rises. And we're not here to talk about that. I finally sat down and watched it, and I did like the movie. I still do enjoy the movie. There's a lot of things in this movie that I feel is right. A lot of cool ideas that get introduced. They don't always get executed to its fullest extent. Of course, a lot of it was world building, but at the same time, I do enjoy this movie. And I'll talk about the parts I don't like either. But as a whole, I thought they pulled off a nice introduction to Spider-Man again, even though we were only, 5 years away from Spider-Man 3.
Right. I think that was one of the biggest weaknesses for me was like, even like, I mean, I gotta say, I loved Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben. I actually liked him better than Cliff Robertson. I thought he was such a, because Cliff Robertson was great, don't get me wrong, but Martin Sheen just felt more real, I think.
He did. He brought more gravitas.
Yeah, yeah. And Cliff Robertson felt more like the, what's a good way to put it? It felt more like Peter's memory of it, right? The idealized memory of Uncle Ben. Whereas, and with, because like you had that one scene where where him and Toby, they kind of fight, where he says, "I know I'm not your father," and Peter yells, "And we'll stop pretending to be." And Cliff Robertson just takes it all in stride. And you never see him get angry or anything like that. He just completely, he's like 100%, always in the right. And whereas Martin Sheen, you see him get angry at Peter and you get the feeling for their relationship. And it feels like a real relationship. And I really like that about what they did with it.
Yeah, because Raimi was so quick to get, I mean, obviously had to in the first movie, but Raimi was so quick to kill Uncle Ben that we didn't get that same that same building that we got in Amazing Spider-Man 1. I guess that's a credit to Mark Webb, but then also Spider-Man 1, I mean, the main point was we got to get Ben dead. We got to show him, got to make the audience like him, and then we got to get out. And they successfully captured that. But they brought a little bit more meat to Uncle Ben. And
and well, that was the downside is what I'm getting to here, because the scene when Uncle Ben dies, like, that scene just felt very much like, okay, we got to get this over with. Let's just do it. It's just like the whole timing of it. Like, Peter's here in this store and then the guy runs out and then he runs into Ben. And it's just like, it felt very convenient.
Yes, definitely. Let's move the plot along and get to Peter grieving, which actually is something I thought that Andrew did better than Toby, was really showing that grief over Ben and stuff. So it did feel rushed, but I definitely feel like Andrew paid it the detail that he needed to.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So that was the biggest weakness, is just the whole going over the origin story again. And even with the whole stuff about, I remember one of the big things that they were talking about in the lead up to this movie was how we're going to put more focus on his parents and Richard Parker and all that. But even still, like, even though there was a little bit of that, it wasn't as much of a focus as they made us think it would be.
No, because obviously after watching both movies again, it was all kind of culminating for 3 to be the big one where they really bring in Richard and Mary and really tell their story, aside from these little snippets that we got.
Right.
So we did get more May and Ben than we might have actually seen if we had gotten a third movie. So
Hmm.
I agree, and it's a little disappointing because the only thing the comics ever gave us was the oh these are your fake parents, gotcha, with
Hmm.
Harry's stupid video. That stupid image is just etched in my head, and I don't think the idea of it was stupid in execution. It's just to think that Harry was that low to do
Hmm.
that to Peter, and then Peter was already going through enough stuff in the comics at the time. So I'm not a big fan of that.
Well, also the
Harry.
whole thing about them being shield agents, like that was all. I always felt like that's just. I mean, the whole thing about Peter Parker is he's supposed to be this everyman, and I think it detracts from it when your parents died on a mission for Nick Fury fighting the communist Red Skull.
Yeah, they were really just throwing things at the wall to try to get to the
Mhm.
Clone Saga, though. Is what
Yeah.
happened. So it was like, let's do this, and then we got the Clone Saga coming, and that's gonna be great.
And then and you had and they had kind of a similar problem with the Ultimate comics. They started to do a better job of it, where they made Richard Parker was just a scientist, but then they
Yep.
had to have him involved in like the creation of mutants and all
Events.
that. And I'm just like, yeah,
Yes.
it's too much. Like,
So
go back
many
to the yeah.
that has to do with again Bendis. Not
Hmm.
even again Bendis. That has to do with Brian Michael Bendis because he was in charge
Hmm.
and he had a lot to do with the early Ultimate Universe. So everything was spawning from Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
he found a reason for everything, kind of like when John Byrne's whole idea coming in doing chapter 1 in
Oh
98.
God.
Everything has to come from Spider-Man and we have to connect these things. And then people was like, this is trash. We don't want this. So
I still, God, I can't. I still remember like the whole contrived explanation for how he brought back Aunt May and that.
oh God. She was played by an actress. The actress
Yeah.
died. And Norman had May kidnapped and like he had her captive for all that time
Hmm.
since 1990, what, 4, I think is when May passed in the
94,
comics.
95, something like that. Yeah.
And then suddenly in 1998, it's like, here's May.
Yeah.
I'm fine, Peter. Here's some wheat cakes. Oh, come on.
And
John.
it was one of the greatest death scenes in comics too. Like that.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, I recently they had they got these trades of the complete Clone Saga, which is like six.
I got
books
one
long.
right there. I
Yeah.
would dig it, but it would take me a few minutes. So
But yeah, so I bought them on one of the Comixology sales, and so I read through the whole thing, and it's like meandering here and there, and there's a lot of like navel gazing, but that issue with Aunt May though, that is such a standout issue.
it really is. Have you played the Spider-Man PS4 game?
Oh, of course, yeah, I played both that one and the Miles Morales one.
Yeah. So that ending with May, I know the game's 2 years old.
Mhm.
Spoilers, but when she says to Peter after he comes back and it's either save her life or make the serum that's going to save everybody
Mhm.
out of what he got from Doc Ock, and she's like, I want to see your face and everything. The first time, because I watched it on YouTube before I actually had the game,
Mhm.
and I was tears.
Mhm.
And he's sitting there trying to make that decision and everything. That was done so well. So that
That game was amazing.
yeah, that game's amazing, and that's the only other reveal of May knowing that was as well done. Because I like JMS's when he revealed it, and May was still living during his run, and she found out, and then she was mad at him and writing J. Jonah Jameson letters about how he covered Spider-Man and stuff. That was real cute, but
Mhm.
on the emotional beats, nothing beats 400 or PS4 Spider-Man.
Yeah,
for
absolutely. Yeah.
that reveal.
Well, I also like how they handled it in the MCU movies too, where she just walks in, I'm in the end, she's like, "What the fuck?"
That works too. Yes.
Which
They go
actually
completely left field.
it was kind of like the JMS reveal, because she just kind of like walks in on him, whereas in the JMS one she found him sleeping and his costume was on the floor.
Yeah,
But here
he was beat the hell up.
yeah. But yeah, so back to this movie. Another big weakness is just the villains in both these movies are just so kind of shoehorned in. Like the villain plots don't really feel like the big focus of these movies.
No, and again, you could just tell they were trying to tell a bigger overarching story.
Yeah.
Like we didn't even really get Norman other than Norman dying, like in saying stuff to Harry
Mhm.
very briefly.
Which I got a lot more to say about that when we talk about Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Oh, please do. But the what made it even worse for me is because Raimi was building the Lizard story like all three
Mm.
movies, and then Lizard was supposed to be in 4, I believe.
I think
he was planned.
I think he originally wanted him in 3, but then the
That's
studio
right.
said
Then the
no.
studio said Venom.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
So he had laid all these seeds, and we're just waiting to see Kirk Connors become the Lizard, and then we didn't get it. And then it's like, okay, well, we're going to reboot it, but we're still going to give him the Lizard. And then we get this Lizard, and I don't, I don't want to take anything away from the man.
Reese
I thought,
Evans.
yeah, the Kurt scenes were fine, but I hated that portrayal of the Lizard. I know it was CGI and everything,
Mhm.
but it really just felt like giant monster, blah blah blah. And it's like, that's not my lizard. I need a lizard, but like I hate. I'm gonna squish your hair, Spider-Man. Connors is dead. That's my lizard, you know. And we would have gotten that with Raimi. So
Mhm.
and so it definitely felt shoehorned in because the major story was, again, a lot of time was put on the origin
Mhm.
this time out, and then it was a lot of a lot of Peter and oh my god.
Gwen?
A lot of Peter and Gwen.
Mhm.
Oh, I kept wanting to say Liz. No, that's Homecoming, Kellen. A lot of Peter and Gwen. So, and I appreciated those things, but the villain just felt like an afterthought. Oh, and it was also a
Mhm.
way to kill Captain Stacy. Let's
Yeah,
not forget
yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah, Reese Evans, he was okay. He felt a little bit too aloof as Connors, I thought. That was the biggest thing. Whereas Dylan Baker played Connors perfectly. Like he was
Yeah,
exactly like that. That he looked like he stepped right out of the comics.
because
Um,
Peter and Connors are friends is a thing.
exactly.
They're
Yeah.
colleagues. Connors respected the hell out of Peter. Like I could literally see them being on campus together every
Mhm.
single day and just kicking it and stuff. And you didn't get that feeling from this
Yeah,
Connors.
yeah. But I do think it was smart to tie Connors into the origin. I think that was a. I think if you're gonna have a villain come out of Peter's origin, then the obvious one is the Green Goblin, which they did obviously in kind of in this one, and in the Ultimate Comics as well. But
Mhm.
Connors probably more than any makes perfect sense, and there's like such an easy way to link them together. He's already Peter's mentor and all that, and he's already doing experiments with cross species mutations and all that. So he is like the perfect character to have as the antagonist and like the way to get into how Peter gets bitten by the spider.
We just should have gotten more of an antagonist is the only
Yeah,
problem I have.
yeah. And we also don't get any of his family in this either. Like there's no mention at all of his wife or his son.
I think it's good we didn't get Billy because this is like right after they did Billy dirty in the comic books
Oh, okay.
when Billy got snot
uh,
got a lizard. So they probably like, let's just leave Billy out of it because I was reading Brand New Day at the time, and when I got to that lizard issue, great issue by the way, a
Mhm.
lot, and I will say there's a lot of good material in Brand New Day. Hated how we got there, but there's a lot of cool stuff.
Mhm.
When that issue happened, I was so shook. I just put the comic book down, man. I was like, all right, I'm done reading for a while. It was a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people give him shit, but I really liked Slot's run on the Spidey books.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't have too many major issues with it either. Like I think he was there for forever. So of
Hmm.
course you're going to get a lot of stuff that didn't work or things that
Right,
didn't
right.
get picked up. He didn't expect to write Spider-Man for 10 plus years or anything like
Well, I
that.
mean, in with the way comics are these days, like nobody lasts on a book that long anymore.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I got to give it to the guy just for that alone, for committing into
Absolutely.
it for that long.
So I don't. I think it gets a bad rap, and honestly, like you can't say Superior Spider-Man isn't some of the best Spider-Man
Oh
comics
my
that
God, you know
come
what
out in the
that
last 25 years.
that was probably the biggest example of me eating crow in like the past 20 years because I
Yeah.
was so pissed when that was announced, and then like a few months went by and some people were saying, I think it was Barry Reese actually saying like, no, this is actually a pretty good comic, and then I'm like, all right, fine, I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna hate it, and then I'm like, oh my God,
Right.
this is actually really good.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like the thing was, it happened in 600, I think 600, 700 when
I
they
believe
switched
so, yeah,
bodies,
yeah.
and you were thinking, okay, this is a temporary thing to launch a new title,
Hmm.
another Marvel gimmick. They stuck with it for 30 issues with all the tie-ins and everything.
Hmm.
And Slott really went wild on that, and he did a great job. So
Yeah.
I love Superior.
That was a magical time for the Spider, because you had Superior, and then you had Chris Yost doing Scarlet Spider with Kane over in there,
With Kane,
which was another one I expected to hate, because I'm like, if you're gonna bring back Scarlet Spider, you got to bring back Ben.
Bring back Ben.
That was also one where I'm like, damn, I was, and those two comics, they taught me, you know what, I'm not gonna say anything until I actually read the book now.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's how I've been too, because I mean, I don't nearly read as many comics as I used to, but I'm like, let me give it a try first before I crap all over it, because that's normally my go-to. It's like, oh, that sounds awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I've read so much Comixology, man. Those sales, they
oh, they'll get you.
I got a stack of, a few hundred graphic novels that I haven't gotten to yet.
Same. It's the way of life. And you have a baby girl now, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I know everything that I used to like to do on the side and stuff. Yeah, I'm lucky to do this. Like, mine's upstairs right now, and she's going to creep down here when it's bedtime to say goodnight. So I feel you.
Yeah. But I'm looking forward to her getting a little bit older, so I can start sharing some of them with her.
Oh yeah. I read The Kid Who Collected Spider-Man to her probably within the last year or so.
Oh,
And
nice.
she's like, why Spider-Man so sad? And I had to tell her. I mean, she's 7, so she kind of grasps the concepts and everything. But yeah, I read that to her. I was like, this is one of my favorite Spider-Man stories.
We've got I'm kind of getting her into stuff right now, because like I'll be putting on because she's 6 months, so like she likes like bright colors and all that. So like I'll put on like some of the animated shows, and she'll just sit there and she'll just stare at the screen with me. So
that counts.
That counts. We're getting her hooked into it already.
Absolutely.
Anyway, but the strongest thing about this movie was definitely the cast, and got to talk about Andrew Garfield then, because the thing about Andrew Garfield, and I said this before, Tobey Maguire was a great Peter Parker, and he was a not so great as Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield was the opposite. He was great as Spider-Man, not so much as Peter Parker. And then Tom Holland was the first actor who managed to do both.
Who does both? Garfield's, and honestly, I still like Garfield Spider-Man a little bit better, only because he portrays an older Peter than Holland. That is the Spider-Man that I've read my whole life.
Yeah.
The quips, the action, like the way everything, again, the gravitas that he brought to Spider-Man was just pitch perfect. It's like he put on that mask and he was Spider-Man, and like even when the guy, like, he's webbing the dude to the wall and to the car when he's trying to break in and stuff like that, that's just funny, and it's played for laughs, and he pulls it off. It doesn't come off as corny.
Yeah.
And Toby didn't get those scenes because Toby couldn't do those scenes. Toby had a couple, but he did not have on the level of Garfield.
Toby, and I think part of it too, because like Raimi's great, don't get me wrong, but his writing does veer a little too close to the cheesy side, which works when you're doing like Evil Dead or Army of Darkness or Drag Me to Hell, but it makes it feel forced when you're doing it with Spider-Man.
Yeah, it sure does. And I love the Raimi films, man, but there was a lot of corny stuff, especially in 3, of course. Dancing Spider-Man, we will never forget. Give me a cookie. Give me a cookie when he's on the phone and stuff like that. And I thought it was funny, but it was a little bit like...
It was funny, but not in the way it was intended to be funny.
Right, that's not the suit influencing him. He just decided to be a jerk.
Yeah.
So that's all that really was. But Garfield is just pitch perfect as Spider-Man, and if I get the chance to see him again in the Spider-Man role, I am very excited for that.
Yeah. Another thing I like too is just his appearance, because he is how I imagine Spider-Man should be. Like, Spider-Man's, he's tall, he's thin, he's lanky, and you believe that Andrew Garfield can twist his body in all these different Spider-Man poses.
He's John Romita Spider-Man come to life is what he is. Because once Romita started drawing it, like, that's exactly how Peter looked circa issue 30, issue 39, whenever he took over and stuff like that. So, and no, I don't know why these numbers are coming to me. But that's exactly how John Romita drew him all those years. So he's a perfect representation for what Peter looks like. Now, is he the perfect representation for how Peter should act?
No, yeah.
No,
And one of my favorite moments in this movie is when he's fighting the lizard in the school, and he's webbing him up, and he's crawling around him. Like, that is such a comic book moment right there.
Yes.
When I saw that, I'm like, holy shit, that is amazing. Yeah.
Ditko-esque.
That was incredible.
Yeah, that goes to the cinematographers and everything like that to get that angle, and even with the CG or whatever, however much that was CG.
Well, that's the amazing thing, is that Mark Webb used as many practical effects and stuntmen as possible. Like, he built like huge rigs in New York City to have those web slinging scenes.
Yeah, yes, he did.
So I mean, credit to him for being it. So I'm not sure how much. Obviously, you had the lizard in there, which was CGI. So, but I'm not sure how much of that was a stuntman or even Garfield actually doing those movements. But however they did that, it looked amazing.
Yeah, they did a great job on all the web swinging and stuff. The costume grew on me. It's not my favorite costume. The second film's costume is that's again spot on. The only difference is the spider on the back, and I love that insignia that they use for the films. So they really did go to all the aspects of Spider-Man. Where with Toby, we were literally getting him swinging one arm through the city and stuff, and he'd get his spider sense scenes, like the Razorbat scene comes to mind in the first one. But Toby Andrew got to do a lot of cool shit.
He did, yeah. Movie. And we got like when that subway scene, right? When he first gets the way he moves in that was just, I don't think Toby ever got a scene like that so we get to see you really feel that the guy in the mask is the same guy out of the mask.
Right. And like watching him once he knows nobody's watching him and stuff, and watch him be able to use his powers and stuff like that. It's exactly how Peter used to do it in the comics. So
yeah.
Spot on.
Yeah. And they also pulled a lot from the Ultimate books in this. Like, this was like, I think more than any other Marvel movie that's come out, this has the most influence of the Ultimate books, because you got, Richard being a scientist, you got the whole Oscorp connection, just like his relation, Aunt May and Uncle Ben being younger, and all of that is just like comes straight out of the Ultimate books. And I thought they did a really good job picking and choosing those different elements. Even like Flash Thompson, because the whole thing is like in the Ultimate books, Flash was a basketball guy, whereas in the comics he was a football guy. Again, they took that right from the comics. Yeah,
and like even the scene where Peter is bullying Flash and stuff, like I don't think Flash did this in the comics, but like it's right after Ben died and stuff, and Peter's ready to knock his block off, so to speak, and then Flash is like, "Hey, I'm sorry about your dad" and stuff. Like that was a great scene, but again, that was something a lot of people were complaining about too, was the ultimate influence on the films, because like we don't want the ultimate version, we want the classic, and then you had the ultimate people saying they wanted the ultimate version, not the classic version. So them being able to kind of pick the certain pieces they wanted was probably pretty cool, because this is really the first time we saw that blended origin on the screen like that. Right. Because you had a few things in Raimi's films that were Ultimate based, but not very much. It was really all about the 616 with them.
Right. So. And despite everybody saying that Avengers was influenced by the Ultimates, basically the only thing is really kind of like the costuming, and that's about it.
Yeah. I remember that too. And that was a thing too, was a lot of people were thinking we're going to get the Ultimates. The Avengers is the Ultimate, the Avengers is the Ultimates. And I wonder how much that Marvel will decide to pivot away from, because the costumes are definitely Ultimate influence. But now we got freaking classic costume Loki showing up in the Loki series. So it's like anything goes now. I mean, Vision and Wanda run around in their old outfits. So we
got Frog Thor,
yes. Spoilers for anybody who wouldn't watch, but yeah.
Speaking of, have you seen Black Widow yet?
I just watched it last night. Yes, I did.
I saw it. I got the premiere access on Disney Plus, because it costs it for me and my wife. It will cost $40 for us to go see it in the theater, so we get a discount and watch it at home. And I'm not sure how long that premiere access lasts for, but we got it on Friday night, and it's still available when I was watching stuff last night.
We've bought a couple things off there, and once you buy it, it's yours. So
really? Nice.
It'll be on there it won't go anywhere.
Oh,
so
sweet.
As long as they got on D+, you're good to go.
I mean, that is such a good deal. I thought it was just like a 24-hour deal or something.
No, that's the cool thing about Disney is like they're more expensive to get it, but you're
Mm.
not renting it. You get the movie through the app as a thing.
Oh, nice.
So we
Awesome.
did like Raya that way, and we did Mulan like that, and we
Mm.
had access to it from then on out.
That's good. Yeah, because I remember what was
So
that
enjoy
movie?
it whenever you want.
Yeah, because I was thinking, I'm like, I got to watch it again because I don't know how long it's. No, no, I can watch it anytime I want. So that's awesome.
Mhm.
But yeah, I loved it. It was I was a little bit the Taskmaster stuff. I had some. I missed the Taskmaster from the comics, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a deal breaker for me. But overall, I
No.
really enjoyed it.
It was a very cool iteration,
Mhm.
and like I came out of the movie, and I always want to do this thing with, especially the Marvel movies. I want to start analyzing stuff and what's this mean and what's this mean.
Mhm.
I was like, I don't have to do this in this movie because this movie sits right between Civil War
Mhm.
and sits right between Infinity War, and I don't have to overthink too much. I can literally just think about if I liked it or not and
Mhm.
enjoyed the scenes and what they did. And I was like, I actually just really like the movie. I
Yeah,
don't need to sit here and break down this performance or what this line meant and everything. They made a good ass Widow
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
So that was
Little
good enough for
bittersweet
me.
that it was Scarlett Johansson's last outing, but like
Yes.
I was half expecting, spoilers for anybody who's watching, but that scene at the end when Yelena does the whistle, I was half
Mhm.
expecting
Yeah.
Natasha
Yeah, I was like,
like to hear a whistle coming from the side and then like just cut to black or something.
or I thought maybe it'd be Hawkeye who was whistling. Because
Oh
I feel
yeah,
like Hawkeye would have known about Yelena at that part
yeah,
at
yeah,
that
yeah.
point. So I was thinking maybe Hawkeye was going to meet her and then we got him in a different
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, and then we got Julia Louis-Dreyfus back though, which she is so good as the Contessa.
Yes,
I'm
she
so looking
is.
forward to seeing more of her.
Yes, I am. I
Uh,
agree. I'm going to need more money. I have a terrible
mhm.
Russian accent, but it was so great.
Anyway, back to Amazing Spider-Man. With the thing about Andrew's Peter Parker is, the thing with Tom Holland's Peter Parker, right? You get the sense he's such obviously a nerd, right?
Mhm.
And you can see why he's got this, and Tobey Maguire too. He's this clumsy nerd. They both pull off those things. Andrew's Peter Parker feels more like an outcast by choice, right?
He's antisocial.
Yeah, it does, because like there's that scene when Flash is bullying the kid and he's saying, "Hey Parker, take the picture," and you get the sense that Pete and Flash could be friends if Pete wanted to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always been my thing was I was just always like, he's too cool to be Peter Parker. Like he's too cool. Like he's skateboard. Like Peter Parker wouldn't be able to skateboard. He wouldn't be doing that. And obviously, and that was my take in 2012. And now it's like, what's the big deal? He skateboards. Like,
Mhm. Well, actually, I think that was a reference to apparently one of the Tony Hawk games, because
yeah,
Spider-Man
'cause
was an
he was in
unlockable character.
He was
Yeah.
in Tony Hawk too. Yeah, I used to unlock him all the time. So all right, I guess I'll let it go. But he definitely he had some nerdiness to him. He
Mhm.
obviously had the tech and the brains and everything. He um he wasn't the coolest person, obviously.
Mhm.
Gwen was attracted to him. I mean, he wasn't hard to look at. I mean, my
Mhm.
God. Shout out to you, Andrew Garfield. But he definitely came off more confident. He
Mhm.
pulled off the emotional scenes well. When he was hurt
Yes.
about
Yeah.
something, you could feel that. Like
Mhm.
I felt that. But any other time he's in school and stuff, and he went to glasses, and it's just like, "Hey guys," and it's like, "Oh man, here goes Peter Parker. He didn't want to talk to anybody. I wish he'd hang out with me.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I wish I
Yeah.
could hang out with Peter tonight."
Yeah. Well, like the whole thing
That's what they
about
said.
Spider-Man is that it's Peter's outlet for like all this stuff. Like it's where he can be confident and all that. And so with but Garfield's Peter Parker is pretty cocky and confident to begin with. So that kind of
Right.
detracts a little bit.
He's one of those kids that's wait, when you got to college, and then if you went to college with anybody that you were from high school,
Mhm.
like they were in high school, like they were cool and stuff, but they weren't real popular. They get to
Mhm.
college, it's like bam,
Yeah.
they're like the
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
popular kid on campus, and they're always
Mhm.
doing all this stuff. He's that kid. He's
Yeah.
gonna walk on a college campus and be the life of the party for the next 4 years.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's portrayal that's how the feeling I get from that Peter Parker. I
Mhm.
don't hate it though. I didn't love it at first, and I griped about it over the years, but I don't hate that portrayal, and I'm glad that we got to see that different version of Peter Parker,
Mhm.
because a lot of people, especially people who don't like Peter or Spider-Man, are like, "Oh man, Peter Parker's such a dork, blah blah blah. He can't keep a girl. He made a deal with the devil. He lost his wife." And like, hey, that wasn't his fault. But people just always down on Peter. I can't get into him for this reason or that and everything. And to see a
Shout out to
kid
Derek because he could never get into Spider-Man.
yes, I just crossed my mind. I was like, Derek always was like, he's like, man, I don't know how you like that Spider-Man. Like, he's so goofy. Sorry, I'm imitating you, Derek, but he's like, you're so goofy to me. I'm like, yeah, but you over here like in Doc Savage. He like, you leave Doc alone. I'll come down there and show you my fist, sir. All right, Derek. All right, man.
But yeah, and one of the things I also liked about Garfield's is you mentioned the whole sciencey angle, the tech angle. Like they did a good job of selling that. Like that scene when Ben, when he's explaining to Ben like about the air conditioner and all that, and like you get the sense that Ben always comes to him when something technical goes wrong in the house, and because Pete knows what he's doing.
That was completely missing from Toby's movies. He rarely got that chance to show the tech because he didn't have web shooters.
Right.
And I love the web shooters in this movie, both movies.
I
love them.
I didn't have a problem with the organic web shooters. I know a lot of people like got all up in arms about them.
I got used to it real quick.
I thought it made sense, so I never had a problem with it. But I never knew how much I would like the web shooters until I saw this movie.
Right, because that was always a thing. With the Stan Lee comics and stuff, he's out of web fluid. He broke a web shooter. And it was a constant issue. Like he could be like, oh man, I dropped my web shooter in the toilet. Like these are things that would happen to him.
Yeah.
And to see the same problems in Amazing Spider-Man 1, I really appreciated it. So there was a lot of catering to the older fans like me while still building this new legacy for what was supposed to be another trilogy of Spider-Man films.
And one thing I thought was they kind of dropped the ball with the web shooters though is the webs come from Oscorp. I'm like, why are you doing that? Like the whole thing is like, that's what I love that the MCU did was this is something Peter developed on his own.
Right. Yes. And Homecoming with all the different set to kill and all the different functions he has of the webs and stuff. I mean, I know it's Tony and Tony went a little overboard, but still Peter developed the web shooters and then Tony just kind of gave him millions of options for webs because he's Tony and he has nothing to do other than invent stuff. So I definitely I mean I did enjoy seeing them on the live action version. I wish we have gotten to see him do more with them though.
Yeah.
Because again, it always comes down to the fist at the end. And who doesn't get a chimney dropped on them? I think I was a chimney. So, but again, the more I talk about the movie, the more I talk myself into remembering how much I like about it, honestly.
Well, there's also one of my favorite scenes is that scene at the bridge when the kid's in the car. And that was such a great scene. Like I thought that Garfield really sells it in that. And
yeah, because I mean, he takes the mask off and everything. And he's like, "Hey, look, I'm just like you. I'm not some weird bug man. Like, let me help you." And that's something. Again, a lot of people are like they're always ripping their mask off so they can show their face because that's how they get paid. And it's like, you know what? No, Peter would totally do that. Like,
in that scene, that is one of the I've griped about that a lot when how the mask always conveniently comes off. Like, my favorite is in the first Avengers movie when the Chitauri soldier conveniently grabs Cap's head and pulls his mask off.
Yes. Of course.
But it made total sense in that scene.
Yeah, he had to get down on his level, man. And like not everybody's super excited to jump into the arms of a red and blue stranger who just swung into the scene, especially when your life's in danger and you're always scared. So in that moment, like Peter came off very human and he was able to save the kid. And again, that's another great beat that they just nailed.
Yeah, despite the issues with Peter being too cocky, I think one thing is Garfield completely nails the character's humanity.
Yes, and again, even as a child, and God, I keep saying again, as a child, that was one of the things that appealed to me about Peter was everybody. And again, that's hold on, I'm good, I promise. That's something that is brought up often about him being an everyman, and that's what Marvel did back in the day was try to make relatable characters with superpowers. But as a kid, and Stan even says it in Spider-Verse, he's like anybody can put on the mask because it's a full face mask. So I could see myself being Spider-Man. But then
Right.
to see Peter Parker be such a down to earth person with all the problems in the world, and his aunt's bugging him about doing his laundry, and you know, and he has girl problems and all these things. It just works. And when you're able to bring the humanity of Peter Parker to the screen, that's half the battle. Even if you do act a little too cool to be Peter Parker.
Yeah. And then the other flip side too is, you know, I think probably my favorite performance in these movies, Emma Stone. Like, she is just,
Yes.
I mean, I love Emma Stone in general, but like, she is so good in these movies. She is before Spider-Gwen, this is like the perfect iteration of Gwen Stacy.
I 100% agree because I love Spider-Gwen.
Yeah, same here.
I just watched Zombieland Double Tap not too long ago, finally, because it was just on streaming, and I like the first one. And the first one's a little better, but it's an enjoyable movie for however long you watch it. And Emma Stone just brings it in whatever role she's got, man. Easy A, Amazing Spider-Man, Cruella.
Oh, Easy A is when I fell in love with her. That was such a good movie.
Yes.
What was the other one? Crazy Stupid Love. That was another one. She was amazing in that one. Yeah.
I am dying to talk about Crazy Stupid Love because I discovered it probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's one of my favorite romantic comedies.
Yeah,
if that movie's on, or if I accidentally run across it on Netflix, I'm watching it every single time. Great in that movie too. But as far as Gwen goes, I mean, we had gotten so used to Mary Jane and Kirsten Dunst's performance as Mary Jane. Mary Jane was the wife in the comics for so long. Gwen had died in the 70s at that point, before we were even born. And so Gwen was always that idolized version. Like, to think back to Jeff Loeb's Spider-Man Blue, like that whole story is about Gwen and stuff. Gwen was always the one that obviously she got away because she got killed. And it's always something that Peter's carried with him. And the respect that Mary Jane always paid to Gwen when talking to her about Peter in the comics, I always loved. So when they chose her, I mean, she had red hair at the time. I don't even know if they had announced.
You know what? It's so weird because every single time every single time they've chosen an actress, they've chosen the one who had the opposite hair color. Kirsten Dunst is a natural blonde. She dyes her head red. Bryce Dallas Howard is a natural redhead. She dyes her hair blonde. And Emma Stone, natural redhead, dyes her hair blonde.
She is better version of Gwen than the comic books could ever dreamed of.
Yes.
Before Spider-Gwen. She is smart, which Gwen was smart, but you know what happened with Gwen? Gwen was always like, "Where were you, Peter? Where are you?" And then Peter's like, "I can't," like off to the side, thought bubble, "I can't dare tell her my secret identity.
Yeah,
I just can't. It would just be too dangerous." Oh, shucks, Gwen. My taxi broke down, and that's why I'm 7 hours late for our date. And it just got so old so quickly. So when Jerry Conway came in and got the opportunity to do something different with her, he immediately did. And it impacted Spider Books forever. We didn't get to see this side of Gwen because Gwen is confident. She's beautiful. She works at Oscorp, which again, got to tie it in. She's confident and cool, but she's not too cool for Peter. Like, she's not. She could easily be a popular girl. She's gorgeous. But I mean, her dad's and her family have raised her right with good values. She cares about people. She just tries to go out and do her best she can every day, and then she happens to just fall in love with this skateboarder named Peter Parker, who then turns out to be the Amazing Spider-Man. So I absolutely loved the performance in this film. And which we'll talk about it later, which makes the second one even more heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Even though we knew it was coming, but you know, we weren't sure if they were really going to go that route or stretch it out or how they were going to do it. So I've really appreciated what she did. And the chemistry, obviously, with Garfield's off.
Yes, I was going to mention that. I mean, there's a reason they started dating because of this movie, because they have Mark Bernardin once on Fat and Beyond, he was talking about the chemistry between Stephen Amell and Emily Bett Rickards on Arrow, and that's why they had those two characters dated. And the line he used was, he said, the line is like, you know, if the camera crew's not here, they're fucking.
That's right. That's it.
I get the same sense with Garfield and Stone. The cameras aren't there, they're fucking.
there's plenty of movies I can think of, and I guess now Zendaya and Tom Holland are,
Yeah,
are doing that now. So, I mean, you either spend too much time together where you start hooking up, or you just hate each other. That's how it goes. But it was palpable, man. Like she only had eyes for him, and he only had eyes for her, and it just came across in their portrayals, and you could sense it even when they were fighting and stuff. Oh, and the fighting was great. The fighting was great because it reminded me of Mary Jane and Peter, because they were always bitching at each other before. She was like, "You're never here. I'm going to smoke." Before those days, which is the early '90s. People look it up. But JMS got a lot of Peter and Mary Jane's relationship right before Mephisto stepped in, because they were really all the time giving each other shit. But at the end of the night, they really love each other, you know?
Yeah.
And the way that JMS brought them back together in the books was great. And to see that pulled from the mention another thing they pulled from different things, to see them pull that relationship that JMS portrayed between Mary Jane and Peter and bring it to Peter and Gwen was very cool. And she wasn't somebody who was just like, fine, I'm mad and I'm going to go cry. She was like, you know what, go fuck yourself. I'll talk to you later.
Well, you get the sense that she's a cop's daughter, right? Like, she's not going to put up with anybody's bullshit.
Right. And comic Gwen never. She was always like, oh, daddy, Peter's never around. And he's like puffing his pipe. He's like, I'm sorry to hear that, dear. But you know, Peter's a growing boy. He's really Spider-Man. And that's just how young boys are. I'm sure you two will figure it out. Also, he's Spider-Man.
I think there's also a bit of a ultimate Gwen Stacy in this portrayal here. Like, there's like the whole headstrong aspect and all that. There's definitely some of that in there.
Which shout out to, I just trash bin this a little bit for spending so many ideas out of the same place, but I really did like Gwen Stacy and Ultimate Spider-Man.
Well, Bendis has always been kind of hit or miss with me. Like, there's some of the stuff I really like. I really liked most of Ultimate Spider-Man. Towards the end, it got kind of, you know, it felt like he was, you know, kind of stretching things out a little bit too much.
Once Bagley left, and you had a different artist and stuff, there was still some good stories.
There's still some good stories, but it was weird with like Aunt May's house becoming like a boarding school for wayward mutants. Yeah,
it turned into Spider-Man Amazing Friends and stuff. I wasn't a big fan of that, but they made it work. And of course, his dialogue, which takes up most of the book, was still sharp as ever.
But other, like, his Daredevil is still amazing. His Alias, incredible.
Alias.
And I liked his I've only read the first Powers book, but I really liked that.
Oh man, you gotta catch up on some Powers.
Yeah, I got it.
Powers might be my favorite thing he's ever written.
But also, I liked his X-Men stuff. It was like his X-Men stuff. It was decent, but it wasn't anything great. But it was entertaining enough.
Never loved his mainstream Marvel stuff too much.
I hated his Avengers. His Avengers stuff, I hated that. But a lot of his, like his street level stuff, I always like that kind of stuff up there.
I was thinking about rereading the Daredevil run recently, actually.
Oh yeah, it's good.
I don't have some of the single issues I used to, so I'm going to have to get a couple of like the later volumes to fill it out, because I have like the early ones. But that whole run with Alex Maleev is just wonderful. So
they had a big Daredevil sale on Comixology, I think, like, what was it, like last year or 2 years ago, and I bought like the whole Bendis Maleev run.
Oh yeah, you got to, man.
It's
a work of art.
Yeah,
it really is. Like, if they ever did a novelization, I'd be there,
and
I'd read the whole thing again.
Yeah. But yeah, his take on Gwen Stacy, that was like the first time I really cared about, because like you said, Gwen died before we were even born, so we never had that connection to her that so many older fans had.
And when Carnage took her out in the books, man, I was upset.
Yeah.
I was really upset by that. I'm glad that we got her back eventually, but that was heart-wrenching, man, because that was a really good story too.
Yeah. But yeah, Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield, like, their personality is, their chemistry is just so good in this movie. And plus, like, Emma Stone, like, even though she's, she makes Gwen into a more well-rounded character than she was in the comics, despite all that, she looks like she was drawn by John Romita.
Headband and all.
Headband and go-go boots and all. I mean, Jesus.
The costume, her costumes in this film they do her so much justice. They don't over-sexualize her. You can tell she has a shape, but at the same time, you can tell she a baddie, man,
Yeah.
and everybody can see that, and Peter especially picks up on it.
Yeah.
And then Andrew really picked up on it. Like, hey,
Well, I mean,
girl.
it's Emma Stone, man. You got to try to take your shot with
Hey,
that.
he heard she was an easy A, so he was trying to holler.
And then also Dennis Leary as George Stacy, another amazing performance in this, because you had, and talking about the difference between like the Ultimate and the old school version, because you had James Cromwell in Spider-Man 3 who looks exactly like George Stacy in the original comic books, whereas you have Dennis Leary who one of his friends told him, oh, I knew you'd get the role. And Dennis Leary's like, why? Because I'm such a good actor? And he's like, no, because you look like the guy.
Yeah. I was a little leery about him coming on, because I mean it's Dennis Leary. I mean, I'd seen Rescue Me and stuff. I knew he had chops, but I mean he's Dennis Leary. He's a jackass, you know. And he brings that to the role though. But still, he's the protective dad at the same time, where he's not the overly protective dad, where it's like a toxic relationship between him and Gwen. Like, I don't want you seeing that boy. You're not going to see a penis till you're 25. Like, he wasn't that guy. He was just more like, hey, watch your back. Because he already knew, obviously.
Yeah.
In the film, he had already put 2 and 2 together.
Well, one of the things I like too is you show that he doesn't have that just kind of like assholey overprotective dad relationship with Peter, because when Peter comes to him and he's telling him about the lizard and all that, and he's just like, all right, you know, I'm going to stay here and worry about New York. You go back and hang out with the citizens of Tokyo. And then once Peter leaves, he goes over to one of the guys and he's like, get me everything we got on Kirk Connors, right? He's like, you know, this sounds weird, but let's check it. It's a good, you get the sense that he understands Pete's a good kid. And if he's this worked up about something, it's at least doing some homework on.
I love the dinner scene when he comes to the apartment, like when he reveals his identity and everything to Gwen. Both of those scenes were so good, and we've all been there where we have that awkward dinner with the girl you like, and then the dad's over here, or the mom, and then you're sitting there and to put Peter Parker of all people in that situation with this girl who's already goo eyes for him, and then the dad who's like just chewing that one piece of steak over and over. That was really well done, because again, it could have been a moment like anybody in a lesser director's hands. They may have said, you know what, have George go off on Peter, throw him out, something like that, you know, and then kind of like have to rebuild that. But I mean, he was just very matter of fact with Peter. He talked to him like he was an equal, and he didn't disrespect his daughter. I'm sure Gwen was still like, hey, you're embarrassing me, but I mean, that's what dads do. So.
Well, and going back to the whole thing you mentioned about him not being like, because he comes in and finds Peter in Gwen's room, like he doesn't flip out.
Right. Like, no, he does not. And because obviously Peter came in through the window.
Yeah.
he's very chill. He's just like,
yeah.
I mean, if he had like, there's a million other scenarios he could have walked in on, which he would have definitely flipped out about it. But I mean, it's like, she's there, clothed. He's there, clothed. Okay, hey, dinner's ready, guys.
Well, you get the sense too that he's like that. You know, he trusts his daughter too.
Oh,
right, because he's not like you said, he's not like, you know, I don't want you seeing that, right? He's like, all right. He's like, you know, what's going on here? But you know, all right, Gwen, I know you got your head on straight, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm gonna hold my tongue.
And that works with her whole good upbringing as well. That her parents really did a good job with her, to the point where they're like, "Yeah, you got a boy in your room. It's fine. Don't make it a habit now."
Yeah.
You're good. So I enjoyed the respect that relationship had.
And his death scene was so good too. Like,
yeah.
I knew that was coming. As soon as I knew that Dennis Leary was going to be playing George, I'm like, I know it's coming. I know. But yeah, just like you mentioned with the second movie, even though I knew it was coming, man, it was so hard to watch because Dennis Leary did such a great job.
I wasn't sure if we were going to get in the first film. Like, I was thinking that maybe everybody would stick around the first film and then kind of build to their deaths later and stuff. But it was really heart-wrenching, man. And then his final words to Peter, man, he's like, you gotta leave her alone, man. It's too dangerous. And we'll get to it, folks. But man, like in the moment as a guy, when I watched it, let's see, this movie came out in the summer of 2012, so I probably watched it late 2012. This is before I had my daughter. In the moment of feeling like the dude being told by the parent that you can't see the daughter. I was like, man, that sucks. Why would he do that to him? Like, especially when, like, you know, like that you obviously tell they like each other and everything like that. Why would he put that on Peter? And like, Peter's not going to take that well. But seeing it as the dad now, who knew the whole time that he was Spider-Man, telling, hey, Spider-Man, hey, Peter, can you not stay with my daughter just so that you don't take the chance of risking her life at some point? Whew, it hits. It hits a little too
You're
hard
right.
now.
Yeah. Like, you know, because, you know, this last time watching it for this episode, it's the first time I've seen the movie since I've had my daughter. And it does flip your perspective a lot.
Sidebar, how much did the beginning of Black Widow mess with you last night?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
So many triggers. I was like,
yeah,
I can't. And I was literally like feeling the anxiety just right here. And I was like, oh, and too many triggers.
Yeah. Such a good movie.
Parenting will change you, folks.
Yeah. Now, funny thing about one thing I like too is they did in this is they worked in the photography angle to Peter's character, right? The fact that he actually is, you never got that sense with Toby, that it was something that he actually enjoyed doing, but it made sense for Andrew because you get the sense that he is someone who actually does enjoy photography.
Yeah. The only time Toby seemed to be enjoying himself is when he was doing his dance scene in Spider-Man 3. For real. So let's be honest. Sorry, Toby. You did a lot for us, but let's be real. But yeah, he was always like with his little camera and stuff. He's like, let me take your picture, you know. But with Andrew, again, it's a big part of the mythos of Spider-Man that he's a photographer. And at first, it's like, I'm going to sell shots of Spider-Man to make money. Peter actually carried photography with him like for a long time in his comic book life.
Yeah.
Like before he got into teaching, and then eventually before he got his degree, thanks Doc Ock, and started his own business and stuff like that. It was always photography. He had his own photo book and everything called Webs. So go look it up, nerds. But to see Peter Parker and Amazing Spider-Man still use that, and then translate it in the present day, and bringing the digital photos and stuff to the table that wasn't quite there in 2002 and 2004 and things like that. It was really cool as a Spider-Man fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And apparently they had also planned to have an additional villain in this. So Irfan Khan's character was actually originally supposed to become the Proto-Goblin.
Oh, which goblin is that? The one
that was that was I think it was what was his name? Nels Van Adder, I think was the guy's name. He was like the test subject that Norman used it on before Norman tested on himself.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was from I think that was from Busiek's what was that series Busiek did? It was the
Tangled Web?
Not Tangled Web. No, it was like stories set in the early years and all that.
Untold Tales of Spider-Man?
Untold Tales, that was it.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's where it came from.
Oh, see, I didn't read all those, so I was not up on my Proto Goblin. That would have been very cool, honestly, because again, doubling on the villains is something that it's risky, as we've seen in the Spider-Man film. But when it's done properly, it could have been interesting, or even if you're setting something up for a future film.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah. Also, do you remember the Michael Bay's Ninja Turtles movie?
Unfortunately, yeah. The first, I didn't see the second one. Heard the second one was better. I did see the first
and marginally, but
okay.
I'm not missing much. But you know what? The funny thing is, every time I watch Amazing Spider-Man, I can't help but think Michael Bay ripped off this plot for the Ninja Turtles movie because it's the exact same plot.
Yes. Yeah. Me and my friend Thomas, my wife got me the Blu-ray of Ninja Turtles for some reason. It was probably cheap. So, hey, look what I got. I'm like, thank you. I'm excited. I'm like, I heard this movie's bad, but I do appreciate it. So we watched it and had some drinks and watched it one night, and it's exact copy of the plot. You're 100%.
Yeah. Every time I watch this movie now, that's just like the one thing that jumps out to me about the ending. It's like, man, Michael Bay ripped off this plot, and it's not even that good of a plot.
No, it's not. Oh wow, good job, Michael Bay.
Yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts about the Amazing Spider-Man?
It actually holds up better than I thought it would. and there's a lot of things that I do like about it. Honestly, Perry, I came on here and I was ready to be like, you know what? Well, this and that and this, but the way we've approached it, because it wasn't just like, hey, what are your thoughts? And then I was like,
Mhm.
we kind of broke down all the characters and stuff, and we paid attention to all the little nuances and things. I I I think Amazing Spider-Man is a good film. I
Mhm.
would say, it's not as rewatchable as the second one. Unfortunately, it's a little slower paced. I
Mhm.
think, and I don't love the second one. But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
second one's more rewatchable. It just is what it is. But overall, I do think there's a good movie. Um, I see a lot of things being laid down that was meant to be built on in the future, and they got a little bit of it in the second movie, but a lot of plot points just don't get to be finished, obviously, because
Mhm.
of the third reboot. But it's a good movie. It's good for the Spider-Man canon. It's true to the roots. They don't try to retell some kind of
Mhm.
crazy story and not make it about Spider-Man and then slap Spider-Man on it.
Yeah.
So it's a solid entry into the film series. I would say this will be my preferred Amazing Spider-Man film out of the two.
Yeah, same here. I mean, like I went back and forth because I didn't. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about the second one,
Mhm.
but yeah, like the more I think about it, the more I realize that this is really like my favorite of the two. Um, and I think like the villain stuff in both of these movies is weak, but the character interactions are so good. And I just realized, I just remembered something I wanted to mention is
Yeah.
I really liked Flash in this movie, surprisingly, because he's got such a small role, but he's so like, because in the you had Joe Manganiello, who ended up being I can never
Sofia
pronounce.
Vergara's
Yeah,
husband.
yeah. But he it's so weird watching the Raimi Spider-Man movie when you see him playing Flash Thompson.
I
But
know.
he was just a total meathead jock guy. But this Flash here, you get a little bit of him, but you get the sense that there's those hints to like him and Peter having a friendship later on down the line, like they do in the comics.
Right, and that's something I really appreciated, because when I came in, they were friends, and then I went
Mm,
back and read the older issues as when they were doing like Spider-Man classics and stuff, and got to see
mm,
their old relationship, and to see that they had grown from
mm.
the bully and the bullied role into actually being friends. And I mean, aside from Felicia showing up and pissing off Flash all the time,
Mm.
like they were actually good friends, and to this day they continue to be friends.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, you haven't been
off and
keeping up.
on.
You haven't been keeping up on the comics, have you?
Well, I know things are a little
Okay.
wonky right now. So no, I am not 100% current, but I know things ain't that great right now. So I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
that.
yeah. You should read the end of Slot's run because some stuff happens in there.
Okay, gotcha. Noted.
But yeah, it's I
To
like
see
the
him
little
be
hints.
human was very cool.
Yeah, yeah, and also like you get the hints that they've known each other for a long time because when Peter says put him down, Flash, he's like put him down, Eugene, right? That whole thing, and I like the little callback, and also the end where Flash is wearing the Spider-Man T-shirt.
Yes. Number one, Spider-Man fan club. Number
Yeah,
one fan.
yeah, yeah. So I like that they worked that in there. I was disappointed we didn't see him at all really in the second one, but
The second one had a lot going on, man.
yeah,
We got
yeah,
three
yeah,
villains and everything.
yeah.
So.
Jesus, yeah. All right. But yeah, I agree. It's not a perfect film, but it is really enjoyable. I think Garfield and Stone are just so good together, especially when compared to McGuire and Dunst. Like God, they had no chemistry at all.
No,
and
and so much whining.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's funny when I was watching this movie with my wife because she was comparing it to the Raimi films, which we'd watched a few years ago, and
Hmm.
and she was like, you know what? I really like Emma Stone a lot more. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, she's like, Kirsten Dunst was such a bitch. I'm like, yeah.
She hated being Mary Jane, man.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
I even listened to an episode of Nerdist a couple years ago. She's like, yeah, I love doing the movies, but I really didn't love Mary Jane and playing that character. But
yeah,
like, what can you do?
yeah. But yeah, I like this movie. It's a lot of fun. And I actually do like the costume. Like it's I'm not it's not my favorite costume, but I think
Hmm.
it's an interesting update of the costume.
Yes, It reminded me of the 70s costume when I first saw
Mhm.
it with Nicholas Hammond,
Yeah.
especially with the lenses and
Yeah,
stuff. And I
yeah.
was like, why are the lenses gold? I've never seen Spider-Man with gold lenses. And then I
You
was
know
like,
what?
oh, wait,
When
Iron
you
Spider.
mentioned the PS4 game, I actually got to go replay that because since when the not too far back, they released an update with the Amazing Spider-Man suit. So I got to
Yes,
play it
that
again.
was the most recent update.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
fact that they are still putting suits into this game 3 years later
Mhm.
is still very cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I played it not too long ago, probably within the last 6 months, and took some photos and stuff. So it looks great.
Yeah,
Looks
yeah.
even better on PS5, but some of us don't have that money to drop yet.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, that was such a, like you mentioned the photo mode. I never used the photo modes in games until that game. That was the only game where I
That's the
cared to use the
only
photo
reason.
mode. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's just too fun, and you can do so many different
Mhm.
poses and comic book covers and stuff. Like I've lost hours just doing that, and not even
Yeah,
realize.
yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm using photo mode. Are you gonna play the game? I'm like, all right, beat it. Leave me alone.
All right. Okay. So Kel, we're sticking around obviously because we're doing 2 back-to-back episodes, but tell people where they can find you.
You can find me, more than likely, will be at hyphenuniverse.com. That's my main website. I have my podcast, Hyphen Nation, which is on hiatus now, but I'm planning on picking it up here soon and getting back at it. You can also go to hyphenpodcastgroup.com, and all the Hyphen Podcast group shows are there on my little podcast network. So you can go there and find all the episodes that I've done. Just wrapped my wrestling podcast with my co-host Handsome Bane. It's called Wrestlecast Power Hour. So that episode actually just came out today. So you can check that out. And if you want to listen to music, just search B-HYPHEN on any of your streaming services, and you'll find my album on there, as long as a couple of loosies that you can check out. And yeah, that's mainly it though.
Okay,
And
great.
Hyphen Universe. You see Hyphen Universe on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload when I do upload.
All right. Well, Kel, thanks so much for coming on. It's great to actually finally have you sit down face to face after.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna try not to say again so much next episode.
It's all right. Well, you went. When I re-listened back to these episodes, I notice I have those. Like I always say that it's interesting. Like this is it. Interesting is my word that I always use.
I'd like to do 100% and absolutely a lot. Like I was a guest on a mini podcast series we did recently about Sex and the City, and I was constantly 100%, absolutely, 100%, absolutely, and I was like, oh my god. So the ticks are there.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. If you're on YouTube, head over to superherocinephiles.com. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get your podcasts. Comment on YouTube. Yeah, please do. And, toss a little money through Patreon or buy me a coffee through the superherocinephiles.com link. And if you're watching this, if you're interested in maybe being on the show, just drop me a line through the contact form, since we're doing rotating guest hosts now that Derek's no longer with us. So
right.
But that does it for us now, and we'll be back for you in the next episode, for us in 5 minutes, when we're talking about The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
And remember, folks, that's interesting.
Yes. You have been listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SuperCinemaPod. Join our Facebook group by searching for Superhero Cinephiles, where you can interact with us and other superhero fans. If you'd like to support the show, you can become a regular supporter at Patreon or make a one-time donation through PayPal, both of which can be found at our website, superherocinephiles.com. If you buy or rent any movies through the Amazon links at our site, it helps support the show. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.